we got a silver sample that contained 15% silver per ton. That's 150,000 grams. Plus, it had 10% antimony, it had 10% copper, and it had 17% zinc.
Ladies and gentlemen, another interview from Toronto around the PDAC, and I'm pleased to welcome for the first time Graham O'Neill, the CEO of Bayhorse Silver Incorporated, here at Investor Talk, to give you, our audience, a first impression of his company. Graham, pleased to meet you in person.
Well, thank you, Jan. It's a pleasure to present our program to a good audience for the first time. This is the first time we have actually been interviewed for a number of years.
That's interesting. We came out of a deep valley, Graham, and that's also my first question. Do you think, while the market is recovering, that exploration companies like Bayhorse, although there are not too many, still offer a lot of potential to catch up with the big names that had clearly a big run, but not so the juniors? What's your opinion?
Well, the problem we've all faced is a lack of investment in mining and minerals. The industry, in my opinion, has been broken for many years, and low prices for especially precious metals, silver and gold, have slowed down investment. That has changed, and quite significantly. I started to see this in September last year, and with the rapid increase in silver and gold prices, and it's changed the mindset of a lot of people about investing in the mineral industry.
That's true. We continue on that topic, but as I always do, please give to our audience some information about your own background, especially your experience in the mining business.
I started Bayhorse in another name 22 years ago. I have been CEO of Bayhorse since that time. I've done quite a lot of exploration in Australia, New Zealand, the US and Canada. But in 2013, I realized that going out and trying to find a project was a fool's game, in my opinion. I'm a builder by nature. A developer, but also a builder. I have a lot of technical experience, so I decided that to reward our shareholders, we wanted to give them value. So I thought the best thing was to find an old mine and attempt to bring it back into production.
Yes, that's an approach many companies did. There's a saying, whether you find a new mine near to an old mine, or you reopen an old mine with modern technology, using modern technology.
Correct, correct. Well, the Bayhorse Silver Mine was actually found in the late 1800s. It was partially mined in the late 1800s, again in 1920s. Again, when silver went up in 1981, 82, it was mined actually for only a year. It was high graded. But the silver prices dropped dramatically after the Hunt brothers failed, and the mine closed within a year.
So you said already something about your main project, the Bayhorse Mine. Obviously, there is another project, but we will neglect this today for the sake of the Bayhorse Mine. You said already something about the past. You have an historic resource, and it's really high grade. Please tell a bit about this resource and how much silver was produced already.
The resource, it's been well known that the Bayhorse is historically very rich. Grades as high as over 200 ounces, 240 ounces a ton, historically being mapped and sampled in the old underground workings. As I said, it's only been mined sporadically, and excuse me, we had our senior geologist, Dr. Clay Conway, and Dr. Jerry Ray, both highly experienced geologists. They conduct structural geology. They look at the mineralization. They looked at that and did a quick sample while we were considering taking it on. And we got a silver sample that contained 15% silver per ton. That's 150,000 grams. Plus, it had 10% antimony, it had 10% copper, and it had 17% zinc. So the mineralization is it's in a very complex structure, which is difficult to resolve. So I looked at what was left in the mine, and by the time we had finished our real view of it, we figured this was well worth going after and putting back into production.
If I'm correct, you have now an inferred resource, right?
Yes.
What are you intending to do? Upgrading it, extending it? What would be the next steps?
Well, the first step, what we did is we looked at drilling from above ground, but because it's a historic mine with a lot of voids underground, we realized that would not be the way to go. It would cost too much and we would get very little information out of it. So as we were considering reopening the mine anyway, we rehabilitated the underground workings. Now we've got about 1,700 feet of underground workings, very accessible, and we did some underground drilling. We had a lot of historic data. It's been looked at by very senior people for a long time, but the economy was just not in the state that would support a mining operation, which it is now. So we built a number of working faces. We had Apex Geoscience do a 43-101, and they determined that there was approximately a 300,000 ton resource inferred with a approximate grade of 21.6 ounces per ton. And so we've been trying to solve the puzzle of how do we deal with the other minerals in it. They weren't at that time critical or strategic. Now they are, and we've resolved how to get value for all the minerals. So while we're ongoing with the final stages of permitting, we're now going to do an underground drill program starting very shortly that will allow us to increase the resource.
And would you, for the first time, stay on your ground? It's, if I'm correct, 140 hectares approximately, or do you already consider to expand it?
Well, we conducted 2 IP surveys last year. We initially thought, along with our Pegasus Projekt, approximately a mile away across into Idaho, that there was the strong possibility of a porphyry copper discovery at the mine or over on Pegasus. So we instituted a drilling program last winter. We put an 1,100-foot hole in underneath the Bayhorse, and 700 feet of that hole was what's called a breccia. Now, a breccia arises from a huge heat source underground, high pressure fluids, gases, which breaks up the rock. So one of our senior geologists, Dr. Ray, was of the strong opinion that the Bayhorse was what's called an epithermal deposit. And that breccia gave him confidence that his call was correct. So we conducted an initial IP survey last March, and then we completed another one last October. And we figured out through GIS and through the interpretations that in actual fact the flat-lying zone of which the inferred resource was calculated was only a part of the picture. It showed 3 other zones going from about 100 meters below grade to 400 meters below grade. So we've got a 300-meter verticality, and that was unknown before.
So they mined only the upper part when they did?
They mined horizontally.
Okay.
They never, they did believe there was verticality to it. In the 20s, they planned at it at a much lower level, about 200 feet down, but it was never put in. The cost and the time was just too great at the time. No one could afford it. But the technology today allows us to see better on what is going on.
Another key issue with mining is infrastructure. Bayhorse infrastructure and geopolitics, we see this now with the Mexican crisis. You are with your projects in the US, so from the country risk, that should be okay. But tell us please a bit about the infrastructure. How is it connected, power, access? And you also, that's a very important point, you have a mill already.
Yeah, well, excuse me, one of the main issues about mining and exploration, as you quite rightly say, is the ability to get access to operations. And in many cases, mines or prospective mines are a long, long way away from infrastructure. So the mine is actually on the Idaho-Oregon border in Oregon, and the border is the Snake River. The nearest town is called Huntington, which is 8 miles away, but it's a county access road. Power runs along the road. So we've electrified the mine. We're also 10 miles from Interstate I-84, which connects Portland with the east. So we're close to agricultural sector and supporting infrastructure in the town of Ontario. So it has everything a mine could possibly need for support. It has electrical, it has hydraulics, it has machinery. And we're only, the town of Ontario is 54 miles from the city of Boise, Idaho.
Ontario, nothing to do with Ontario, where we are right now.
Not to do with Ontario, Oregon. So the nearest commercial and international, in fact, airport is Boise, Idaho, which from the mine is 75 miles, most of it along interstate. So access is really easy. Idaho Power has 3 hydroelectric dams on the Snake River just south of us. So we have no issue with power. We have no issue with water. We have no issue with access. We have no issue at all with all the supporting services required by a mine. The agricultural processing facilities around Ontario are similar in needs to what a mine needs. So we're very fortunate in that respect.
A big plus point, we have to get back to your mine, and you mentioned already the antimony. We saw this, China stopped exporting antimony and then the price skyrocketed. You have a lot of antimony in your ore. How does this change the economics, and are you able to capture, to get the antimony out?
Yeah, and that's a very interesting question. When we first looked at the mine, we had to decide just how we were going to mine it and whether we could put a mill to process the mine mineralization in Oregon. And that was just patently not possible in our estimation. We're right beside a reservoir. We required an enormous amount of additional infrastructure if we tried to do that. So we decided to make the mine a low environmental impact mine. And the mineralization is called tetrahedrite, which is a tightly bound structure of antimony, copper, silver, lead, and zinc. And the problem with the smelters with that kind of structure, if you go to the best possible value, which is copper silver, the antimony and the lead and the zinc interferes with the recovery of the copper silver. So you don't get full value. So we also had to figure out how to process it, how to float it. So we established a float facility, a mill, grind mill, ball mill facility, float facility in Payette, Idaho, about 40 miles away. We installed a Steinert ore sorter, which is basically just a device. I call it a gunnery targeting system from my military background, because that's essentially what it is. It looks at the rock, sees the density, selects the pieces that have got high density, and rejects that has low density. So with our mine at for example, a 200 ton a day mining rate, we can reduce that volume of rock by about 75 to 80%. So we're only shipping something like 50 tons a day over to our mill. Now, with the the antimony problem, the Sunshine Mine up in Idaho Silver Valley also had antimony, and they managed to separate the antimony, but not to a great extent. And they made a lot of money out of it, but it's a very, very expensive process. So fortunately, over the years, chemical engineers have figured out how to separate the antimony. So Elohis Engineering, we submitted a sample of our float concentrate to them, and they, in fact, separated. They got 99.9% recovery of the antimony and any gold contained in the tetrahedrite, and they separated the tetrahedrite out completely. So now we have two streams, assuming, of course, that we can install a or a leaching facility at our mill. So the tetrahedrite has now become an asset. Primarily, we are a silver mine. And initially, the tetrahedrite, the copper, the lead, zinc were a problem that had to be solved. Now that is solved. So now we have two streams right off the bat. We have the silver, because the recovery becomes higher, and we have a separate tetrahedrite, antimony stream out of the tetrahedrite. And as the Bayhorse Mine has minor amounts of gold in it, we also get the gold recovery with the antimony. Now, as you quite rightly point out, antimony is a very versatile and very valuable now material. And
critical mineral defined by Trump's government.
Well, it's not just defined by Trump, it's defined by the world. It's used for example, antimony pentoxide is used in glass manufacturing. Antimony itself is a flame retardant. It's used in many, many things. It's also used in the military for explosives. U.S. Antimony, in fact, has received huge grants from the U.S. government to produce an antimony stockpile. It used to be used for fishing lures, and it was cheap. Now it's not cheap. So until we manage to separate or find a separation method for the antimony, the payout for us if we shipped it to a smelter would be in the region of 35% for the copper and maybe 84% for the silver, just in round numbers. But now we have the antimony out, we can get significant value. SME, the Shanghai Metals Exchange, was paying something like $18,000 for a ton of 55% antimony concentrate. So we would get around 200 pounds of antimony from every ton of concentrate. This is average what we've predicted. Now we're going to do a bulk sample from the mine fairly shortly. It's planned and it's ready to go. And we're going to run that through from run-of-mine material. And that will allow us to stay on from an independent source, not just our source, independently, that this is the amount of antimony, this is the amount of silver, this is the amount of copper, this is the amount of zinc. This is what our ore sorter will sort. So we're going to know from an independent calculation just exactly what our recovery, our content is, and going to the mill, we will be able to establish exactly what percentages are in the float concentrate. Most of it we've done in development material before, not from run-of-mine. So it's actually quite exciting getting value when 5, 6 years ago we were scratching our heads wondering how we would solve that issue, but it's now solved.
Times change, and especially in the mining business, they can change violently. But let me come back to permitting, because this is always, not always, but sometimes a big issue. I think with the antimony and with your base in the US, you have no problem, but what's the current status of your permitting process?
We were initially operating under exemption to the regulation. The Oregon government did a GIS survey and believed we had exceeded our 1 acre permitted disturbance. There's a dispute about that. They were relying upon photos, we were relying upon surveys, but the prior mining had also done disturbance, and they were including that disturbance. So we knew that the restriction under the exemption was basically 5,000 cubic yards a year. And if we were to make the mine profitable, we would need to go to an operating permit anyway. So we started the operating permit 3-4 years ago, got held up through COVID restrictions. No one could get down there. Everything was limited, but that was general all around the world. And then, fortunately, the mine sits within what's called the baseline study area of Idaho Power's renewal of their hydroelectric dam licensing. So in the relicensing, they had to do what is called a baseline study, and that's numerous things. It's water pollution, it's noise, it's soils, it's wildlife, fish because they have a big reservoir there. So the mine access lies directly within their baseline study area, which has already been approved. So we're piggybacking on that baseline study for our own baseline study for the disturbance area, which is approximately 5 acres in 4 hectares. So we've done all the studies except for what's called a groundwater baseline study. That was held up, but it's now in the final stages. We drilled 3 two 190, 200-foot holes and 1 720, 30 hole. We have to test the water, if there's any water in them, over twice. The first one was done 2-3 days ago. The next one we done in a couple of months. And we have an independent company that's doing that study. So once we finish that, that is the last of the baseline studies required. Now, our anticipation is that we will, in fact, be able to file the final permitting application by June of this year. Now, that's our anticipation. You know, if the studies and the reports take a little longer, it'll take a little longer. And then the DOGAMI, the licensing authority for the mining, will review it, and they'll have their independent people look at it as well and decide whether we've done enough work or whether they want more. So it's a regulatory process, and then we just have to follow it through. But it's a operating permit, not a full combined permit. We don't have to worry about putting a mill in and doing all the additional studies.
I think with your antimony content, they should have an interest in getting this mine pretty quickly into production. What would be your timeline, if everything goes well, a realistic guess when you could start?
We're projecting, if all goes well, if our baseline studies are accepted, and there are no additional issues to take care of, we anticipate end of June to submit our final formal application. And we're allowing at least 6 months for a review and any other information they want back. One of the concerns that everyone has about mining is acid rock drainage. That's a big issue. However, the Bayhorse Mine is in a carbonate sequence. And as everyone knows, if you have an acid-reducing environment, if you get rain and there's sulfides, they're quickly reduced by the carbonates. So what's called an acid-base assessment, with a 0 being neutral, we have an acid-base assessment which will be, again, reassessed by our independent analysts of 29, I believe it is. So it's highly alkaline. So if there's any rain that dissolves a little bit of sulfides, it's immediately neutralized, and then we have to look at what we're going to do with the rejects. We want to put them back inside the mine as we mine, so we have very little reject material on the outside of the mine. But again, that will be subject to the regulatory authorities saying, yes, we agree with your assessment and this is fine to put back underground. It's a dry mine.
Okay.
The Bayhorse is a completely dry mine.
A very good plus point also. And do you have already any estimates about the capital requirements to get back to production, and how do you want to finance? I assume with the least possible dilution.
You know, Jan, dilution is a really, really important factor. But we've spent US $12.2 million making the mine actually in a formal mining condition. Once we get permitting, we can go in and we can start mining. We've developed 3 working phases by reopening the historic mines. It was high graded in the past. In fact, in 1984, they mined it and they trucked it 350 miles to a float mill. So we're going to minimize all that time and cost of transportation because we have our own mill 40 miles away. Our Steinert ore sorter allows us to reject 75 to 80% of the material. So we've figured out how to do it in a fairly economical fashion. Now, during our mine working, when we were permitted or operating under the exemption, we figured we could mine at about $18 to $20 an ounce of silver. Now, we checked that against inflation since then, and we've talked with some other companies, and they figure their cost to produce their silver is $31 an ounce. So right now we're saying, okay, we know running it internally, our numbers are less than that, but it hasn't been proven in actual mining conditions, just development work, and there may be some changes in that. So we're just saying, okay, if we use that $31 an ounce, which is a couple of different operations working, then we can have a pretty good idea of our operational costs. And at 200 tons a day, which is logistically conservative manner of mining, the least cost and the least logistics, we know pretty much how much it's going to cost us. We have a budget, we've mapped it out, current run of mine life, which we figure is going to be 6 to 7 years. So we know what our costs are. We have all our core staff trained, ready to go. But money, that's a different kettle.
Absolutely. You mentioned already this technology to sort the ore, your Steinert ore sorter. I saw it's also at your website. I didn't know this, that this existed. It seems it makes a difference because it comes with a cost, obviously. But it must enhance your profitability more than it costs, right?
Yes, my formal background training is naval electronics, radar, sonar, propagation of radio waves. So I understand the nuances of technology more than a lot of people. So the ore sorting was actually produced initially to sort waste piles from commercial waste, residential waste, and that, to make it more efficient and to solve a pollution problem. And pretty quickly, the people who were manufacturing this process realized it could be used to sort ore or minerals. I was approached by Steinert in 2017 at a conference in San Francisco, and after a fairly brief discussion, I realized it was nothing more, in my opinion, than a gunnery targeting system. And I was on a number of naval ships, and I did all the radars, so I knew exactly how it operated, I know exactly what it did. So I went to my board and I says, we need this.
So they went to the right guy back then.
Yeah. The problem was that not many companies knew much about ore sorting, and I knew more than most of them. I didn't have to go to the experts because in essence, I was as knowledgeable as they were. So it didn't take me long to make the decision that yes. So we paid about $900,000 US for it. It's manufactured in Germany. It's a fine piece of machinery. It will do 40 ton an hour of rock, sort it. It has limitations. It can only sort down to a certain size because if anyone understands radar, close in you get what's called ground clutter. It can't discriminate. So because the ore sorter ejectors are 6 millimeters apart, I just made a determination that if we used 8 millimeter rock as the bottom size and 25 millimeters the top size, which is less than what Steinert recommends, but we could get fairly good discrimination, and that has proven out. And in all our testing, we actually rented the ore sorter while we weren't using it during COVID to another company, and they took their stockpile, copper gold, and upgraded it significantly, and they were able to get revenue from it. And of course, we got revenue from the ore sorter by renting it to them. So it was a reasonable win-win. So now we have it back, and we're so close to, in our estimation, mining and production that probably it's going to stay at our mine from now on. But excellent technology. It not used in every aspect of mining. Ours, because we have a vein system and we have a fairly clear distinction between the minerals and the waste rock, for us it works out. Sizing becomes an issue, but there are various restrictions, but it doesn't affect us, so it works fine for us.
So over the next 12 to 18 months, what catalysts can investors look forward to summarize it?
Well, with silver currently at 95 on the COMEX and on Shanghai physical metal over $100 right now, of course, the economics or the proposed economics of the Bayhorse become very, very magic is my word.
Attractive.
So while we have a inferred resource, and while we now have IP surveys that show us the extent of the mineralization is much greater than what was historically thought, our immediate program is to start an underground drilling program of between 2,000 and 3,000 meters to target our 4 zones. In the latest IP survey, it's identified zone CR1, CR2, and CR3. And in the prior March program, we identified 3 or 4 targets just to the east of the historic mine working. So that's 4 targets. one of the groundwater test wells intersected one of those earlier IP zones, and we got 10 feet of, I think it was 28 ounces a ton silver, plus copper and antimony, everything else. We missed it with our 1,100-foot deep hole, but we have 4 zones now that are reachable from just one drill station. So any intersect on any one of those 4 targets, and we're assuming, because it's already been demonstrated the first IP target is mineralized, we're making the assumption that all the rest will be mineralized. So we should be able to very quickly, in the next 6 months, increase the resource. Our geologists believe that the inferred resource is actually minimal as opposed to what could be. We have 300,000 tons approximately. They believe it will go at least treble that. Because now, instead of having 700 feet by 200 feet by 100 feet, we now have 1,000-foot verticality in 4 different zones. So then it's just a matter of math. The drill holes will tell the story. We intersect in the first one. It gives us significant confidence that the other ones are going to be mineralized as well. And they're all accessible from the current underground workings. So I'm going to make a good guess that we should at least get double the resource with these other zones. We've already demonstrated that one of them outside the resource calculated area is mineralized.
Closer to the closing, Graham, what is your longer perspective, your vision for Bayhorse? Do you want to develop the mine, increase it out of the cash flow, make it an attractive takeover target? What is your vision?
Well, you know, that's an interesting question. A lot of companies look to develop and sell. If someone takes a look at us, if we increase our resource and someone takes a look at us, if they want to buy us, we really have no option. Whether it's a equal takeover, whether it's someone doing a hostile takeover, if someone wants our resource, if we build it up, there's nothing we can do about it. But as long as our shareholders are happy, I'm happy. But right now, we are going to continue developing the mine, get the permit, start mining. When we get additional capital, we want to start drilling the Pegasus Projekt, which our geologists believe is a highly prospective porphyry copper target in the south, and in the north of the prospect, an extension of the Bayhorse Mine. Idaho is much more receptive to mining than Oregon. So we're going to keep building value, increase the resource as much as we can, get the permit, start mining. And our calculations show that all the exploration work and operational work to get the mine going is a little over $13 million US. And, you know, it's only cost us $12 million already. So for a 6 million 200, 300 ounce resource with the price of silver today, I mean, that's a massive, massive value in silver alone. We're not talking about silver equivalency, we're talking just the silver. So this little resource, as some people say it's too small, is actually quite significant in value today. So if we double the resource like we believe we can, we become very attractive as a takeover target. If we drill into the proposed copper porphyry, Hercules Metals discovered a porphyry copper deposit about 40 kilometers north of us.
Also,
We're in exactly the same zone. They went from 25 cents a share to $1.65, and they had a major come in, Barrick Gold or Barrick Exploration, and invest a significant amount of money. So we're, I hate to use the expression ripe for the plucking, but when you develop something that's really valuable, others want it. And we have the antimony, we have the silver, considerable silver. In 1984, they took a mined round out of about 50 tons that graded 100 ounces a ton. That's why they were able to ship it a long way for processing. We don't have to do that. I know we're going to become a tempting target, but I have to put that aside. We have to focus on building a resource for when we start mining, following the process to get the permit in place, and then keep on developing. As we develop, as we create value, I know we're going to become an attractive target, but I can't worry about that. It is not my main goal. My main goal is to reward our shareholders. And it's rewarded by increasing the resource, increasing the value, and that should increase our share price, and that will make shareholders happy, in my opinion.
Absolutely, it does. Graham O'Neill, that was your first appearance here on the Investor Talk. I thank you a lot for your insights, and especially those ore sorting technology. Interesting, I didn't know that. We are looking forward to many exciting news over the year, and hopefully very good drill result. It was a pleasure to talk to you today.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure being interviewed by you, and we look forward to a long association.
Thank you. Bye-bye.